Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Jack Cameron's office was a beautiful apartment. You reached it by a wide staircase with strong and nicely designed railings. A little lady walked up the staircase, a lovely sight in a silk blouse, soft yellow lace, golden hair, light brown gloves, and tan shoes. She wore a fashionable perfume, mixed with the gentle smell of yellow roses pinned to her blouse. She knocked at the door. When no one answered, she turned the handle. "May I come in, please?" she asked with a laugh. A young man stood in the corner of the room next to a machine that made a quiet, steady clicking sound. The machine released a thin, endless strip of paper onto the floor in loops. On this paper were strange letters and numbers, which most people would not understand. But that meant a lot to people who worked in Jack's business. He turned when he heard her voice. "What? Dolly?" he said with surprise. "Yes, Jack. Didn't you expect me?" Of course," answered Jack Cameron, looking a little confused. The girl walked across the room and held both of the young man's hands, looking into his eyes. "You look worried," she said softly. "Oh, only a little. There are always worries in business, especially when the market is shaky. But I'm so happy you're here. I'll forget all my problems now that you're with me." Jack's voice sounded happier, and the worried look on the girl's face faded away. They were engaged. The wedding was planned for the next week, so there was a lot to do, especially for setting up their new home, and the future bride was excited. Shopping before marriage has its own special fun. For each thing she bought, she felt an extra joy. And there was also the happiness of using the money her future husband gave her and the pride of showing him how well she could bargain. Jack Cameron was a stockbroker and had done fairly well with South African investments. But like many others, he had kept his Narbados shares for too long, and he was now expecting to lose some money. It wasn't enough to cause serious trouble, but it was enough to make things harder, especially now that he was planning to get married. Dolly Hardcastle knew nothing about this. In fact, she knew nothing at all about the stock market. To her, stockbroking seemed like an easy, pleasant job where a gentleman stood in Throgmorton Street, wore his hat tilted back, smoked cigarettes, ate oranges or strawberries depending on the season, and talked about cricket or football. This was her first visit to Jack's office, and she was curious about everything, especially the telephone. She was not happy until Jack showed her how to use it. The ticker machine also caught her attention completely. The constant click, click sound and the endless strip of paper coming out without anyone touching it seemed almost magical. Dolly looked at the white strips with wonder. "What does this say, Jack?" "NR Narbados, 2.5. "What does it mean?" Unfortunately, Jack Cameron knew very well what it meant. Narbados had dropped in value. When Miss Hardcastle arrived, he had been thinking about whether he should sell. This new number helped him decide. "Dolly," he said quickly, "do you mind if I leave you alone for 5 minutes while I run over to the house?" No, Dolly didn't mind. Business, of course, had to be taken care of. Jack grabbed his hat, gave her a quick kiss, and hurried away. "Dear Jack," said Dolly, sitting down at the office table and staring at the ticker machine. "I wonder if he has many visitors? What will I do if anyone comes?" She was thinking about this, with a paper knife held to her lips, when the loud ting, ting, ting of the telephone startled her. Someone wanted to talk to Jack. It might be important. Should she answer the phone? It felt nice to help her future husband. "I wonder if I could pretend to sound like Jack," she thought. She went to the phone and did exactly what Jack had shown her. She heard a deep voice say, "Are you there?" "Yes," said Dolly boldly. "I have an offer of 5,000 rosebuds. Will you take them all, like you said the other day?" The wire just came. 5,000 rosebuds, cried Dolly, her eyes shining and her cheeks turning pink like the flowers she was thinking about. "Then Jack is going to decorate the church after all. What a sweetheart. He hasn't even forgotten the wire to tie them with." The man on the phone was clearly getting impatient. He shouted that Jack needed to decide right away. Since it was about something that concerned her, Dolly didn't hesitate to answer. "Yes," she said, trying to make her voice sound as deep as possible. Dolly felt like dancing around the room, but she was afraid to make noise and disturb the office below. She calmed down slowly, and by the time Jack Cameron returned, she was very quiet. Jack had sold his Narbados shares and lost 500 pounds in the deal. But there was no point in being sad about it now. The result was that he would need to be very careful with his money for the honeymoon. But he didn't want to tell Dolly about it that day. He would keep his promise and take her to a nice lunch at Birch's. So, pretending to be cheerful to hide his real feelings, he guided his fiancée across Broad Street and Cornhill. They spent a long time at lunch. Enjoying Dolly's happy smiles, Jack gradually forgot about stocks, shares, and money problems. After they finished at Birch's, Dolly wanted to see the new paintings at the Royal Exchange, and he couldn't say no. It was almost 3 o'clock when he remembered that, although spending time with Dolly was wonderful, he had several important letters to write and needed to go back to his office. "Thank you, Jack, dear, for being so nice to me today," whispered Dolly as they walked towards the entrance of the exchange. "And thank you especially for letting me decorate the church. The roses will make it look so lovely." Jack stared. Had his Dolly lost her mind? "Decorations, roses," he repeated, confused. "I don't understand." "Oh, that's so clever of you," laughed Dolly, pretending you don't know anything about it. "You wanted to surprise me. Honestly, I never planned on decorating the church. I would love to make you happy, of course, but, well, he had already decided that decorating the church was one expense he would skip. Come on now, admit it. Didn't you order a lot of rosebuds?" "You must have forgotten," Dolly insisted. "Anyway, it's fine because while you were out, a message came through the phone asking if you'd take 5,000 rosebuds that you'd talked about with someone the other day, and of course, I said yes." "Oh, Jack, dear, what's wrong? Rosebud's telephone. Now I understand what happened, stammered Jack, looking very worried. Oh, Dolly, Dolly, what did I do? Nothing too bad, I hope. If you don't want the church decorated, I won't mind too much. It's not that, Jack said, looking quite strange. You couldn't have known, but the message wasn't about flowers. It was about shares in the Rosebud Gold Mining Company.
Oh!
Dolly said, surprised. It was true that Jack had thought about buying shares in Rosebud, but he had heard some bad news about the mine and decided not to. Now, he was about to become the owner of 5,000 shares. Just 2 days before, each share was worth 10 shillings, but the price was falling. Buying them wasn't possible, and selling them would mean a loss. Dolly, he said quickly, let me see you onto a bus. After a quick goodbye, he helped Dolly onto a Kensington bus and ran to the stock exchange. What are Rosebuds worth? He asked another stockbroker excitedly. 15 shillings and 6 pence to buy, 14 shillings and 6 pence to sell. And the shares had been just 7 shillings and 6 pence when the market opened that morning. Jack wondered what had happened and what price Dolly had bought them at. He knew who had sent the phone message, so he hurried to his office and called the broker. 8 shillings, came the reply. Congratulations! Your profit will cover your honeymoon and a bit more. You'll want to sell, of course. It's a quick rise and I'm in the know. Sell? Of course. A profit of over £1,800 would more than make up for his loss that morning and leave him a good amount extra. Dolly, my dear, he whispered that night, the rosebuds are wonderful. The whole church will be covered with them from one end to the other. And so it was. But, being cautious, he never told Dolly that, without her accidental help, there might have been no roses, and maybe not even much of a honeymoon. He didn't want Dolly to get any ideas about helping him again,